Welcome to a brand new wave, drowning out the noise that's tame. Liberty whispers through the brave, breaking free from every chain. Nullify the rules they crave, crypto beats that pave the way. Anarchy with minds that's safe, algorithms new dawn today. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride. Beyond control we take a stand, casting off the iron brand. Freedom flowing through our hands, revolution's our command. Decentralize the way we plan, all together we expand. Breaking shackles for the clan, in this journey we're unpanned. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride.
Happy Friday, into February. Let's get into the spring, man, because I'm sick and tired of this bipolar weather. I am the legacy of Jennifer and Kaiser. I'm Zachary Kaiser, and we got a continuation today. But beforehand, before you watch us, make sure you go to freerogernow.org, sign the petition, and let's free that man. Let's get him home and out of Spain. He doesn't have to come to America, but he does need to get the fuck out of Spain. With that, welcome in Andrew Joseph.
Hey guys, what's going on? Time to do some spring cleaning.
It's not quite spring.
I know.
I mean, that's
but I was looking around
that's
and I
when
found
the
this PDF and I thought, why
mm,
not read it?
why not read it? It actually fell into our laps, so stop
Yeah,
lying.
I
Stop
know.
snitching,
I'm
stop
sorry.
lying.
I'm not snitching. Snitches get stitches. I don't have any stitches. At least not right now.
Well, with that, last week we started the series on the CFPB and the concept of behavioral economics and how it is utilized in a concept of social engineering and how governments, businesses, everybody, individuals, we all do this. I mean, it's not necessarily nefarious in its own right until you start utilizing it in nefarious means to control people. But we manipulate people and we manipulate ourselves on a real level every day in how we interact and how we act and how we assess risks. And so, the concept of what the CFPB has effectively been established to do is to relegate those risks that we have to uh, assemble every day in our financial lives, our economic lives. Um, it outsources the authority, and then that authority is not overseen by any other authority. So you basically have a regulatory outfit that's regulating themselves effectively. There is no checks and balances in this country. Sorry, constitutionalists. And you're you're enforcing individuals to not have to take their own responsibility for their own risk assessment in reality of life. We all make mistakes, and we all have to learn from our mistakes, and that coincides with how we administer our own money, how we invest in our own lives and our own businesses, and et cetera, et cetera. How do we raise our own families? Everybody's different, and everybody makes mistakes, and some mistakes are catastrophic within your own right because you fuck up majorly. But what happens when you outsource that authority of your own to a overstretched federal government that creates yet another authority that allows you to effectively be stupid because they'll protect you?
Well, worth and value. Are you going to prioritize shame, or are you going to prioritize pride? One's stronger than the other. You
One
can
is
throw one under
also
the
a
bus.
one is also a seven deadly sin, and it's actually not shame. Don't be
Just
prideful,
saying.
anybody. Don't be prideful.
It's a function in
It
the Enneagram. That's all I'm saying.
so everybody,
So,
it's good to it's good to be proud, but it's not a good thing to extend that pridefulness. Let's just put it that way. You got to be humble. You got to be shameful. And I think when it comes to organizations and outsourced means of authority, you're effectively allowing yourself to be so proud of your fuck ups that you don't have to hold to any consequences because somebody else will fix the issue. And it ends up backfiring in your face because once you give somebody control over you, good luck trying to take that control away from them and take back your own life.
and then there was no success. The third worth and value section.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's called having an authority, picking winners and losers. That's exactly what it is. So, if without further ado, let's jump into it. Andrew wants to read it. We've had an argument over testing it and talking about it like sensible human beings. And he has effectively manipulated me into allowing him to just read 37 pages of a PDF. Read
Well,
fast.
I read like a failure, and let's go. That's the second.
So,
We'll just jump straight to page 3. Introduction. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, is one of the most powerful and least accountable regulatory agencies in American history. Immune from budgetary oversight by Congress and headed by a single director whom the president cannot remove except under special circumstances, the agency wields unconstrained, vaguely defined powers to regulate virtually every consumer and small business credit product in America. Zewick, 2013. In part, the CFPB has justified its ongoing intervention into financial credit markets based on prior beliefs in the inability of consumers to completely weigh their decisions. This belief is founded on research conducted in the area of behavioral economics, which shows that people are prone to a variety of errors in their decision making. Beginning with seminal work of Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman, his convenient name, and his co-author Amos Tversky, behavioral economics has identified numerous. Stop it, Zach. Has identified numerous proposals, behavior anomalies through extensive laboratory investigations. Anomalies or behavioral biases are defined as observed behavior deviations from the predictions of neoclassical economic theory, with its assumption that people rationally optimize according to a given set of information and constraints. Behavioral economics has sought to explain the source of such anomalies, chosen by identifying and categorizing a variety of cognitive limitations and psychological biases. Building on the findings, behavioral theorists have extended their research into the policy realm. This program, led by such will you cut that out? Led by such luminaries as Richard Thaler
You're
and
doing
Cass
good.
Sustein, and known just a second, and known as behavioral law and economics, applies the insights gleaned
Hold on.
from studies.
Let's stop right there for just a moment, and let's give a little rundown of what behavioral economics is. So
Okay.
this comes from an AI program that beats ChatGPT big time, called Venice. As you can see, I've been using it. But
Essentially.
according to the AI, after putting in the question, can you provide me information about behavioral economics and the CFPB with citation? I wanted citations. Behavioral economics has gained significant attention in recent years, and its application in consumer finance services policy has been a topic of interest. The Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, CFPB, has explored the use of behavioral economics in its policymaking. According to the CFPB, behavioral economics can inform consumer financial services policy by providing insight into how consumers make financial decisions. The CFPB has held symposia on behavioral economics, featuring remarks from its directors and testimony from academic and policy experts. One such symposium, titled Behavioral Economics and Consumer Financial Services Policy, included discussions on
Methodological.
methodological, I don't know, man, it's too early.
It's Italian.
Foundations of behavior, yeah, it's Italian, or I'm retarded. Of behavioral economic, I'm thinking the latter, of behavioral economics and its application to consumer financial protection. For more information, you can refer to the CFPD's website, which provides information on its researchers and their work on behavioral economics. The CFPB's work on behavioral economics has been noted by other organizations, such as the Heritage Foundation, which views the CFPB's exploration of behavioral economics as a positive development for consumers. Commies. While there are various resources available on the topic, a specific citation is not provided in the, well, whatever. But anyways, these are all the citations that I was able to be given. Uh, let's ignore the fact that
Red Lobster.
Red Lobster.
Was
Yeah.
that World
Ignore the
Blockchain
fact that
Roundtable?
the original one, the original question was about the client list, but then it turned into, yeah. But anyways, look at all this information. Just
So sexy.
gravitated. I can't. Oh, behavioral economics is the study of how psychological, social, and emotional factors influence economic decisions. The CFPB has incorporated behavioral economics into its regulatory approach to better understand how consumers make financial decisions and to determine more effective consumer protection policies. They want to protect you, everybody. Um, this is a list of their policy initiatives, right? So disclosure requirements. Obviously, is that a good thing or a bad thing, Andrew, to have disclosure requirements, or should
If
individuals be able to make their own decision?
if you're a public official, you always should disclose. Or if you're in a
Well,
public spotlight,
yeah,
transparency is key.
but at the same time, if you're a human being, you should always understand that not everybody's for you. But the
That's right.
CFPB has used behavioral economics to assign more effective disclosures, such as the know before you owe mortgage disclosure rule, which honestly, I'm not going to say that there aren't some positives to their policy. Um, which aims to help consumers understand the terms of their mortgage, which that's effectively very positive because honestly, it's all legalese. And to the average human being, to the average American, we're retards. So, but at the same time, you're also taking away their responsibility to be responsible in themselves. So it's a double-edged sword, really. Credit card regulations. CFPB has used behavioral economics to regulate credit card practices such as the credit card accountability, responsibility, and disclosure. Wow, Card Act, such as the credit card accountability, or which prohibits certain deceptive practices and requires credit card issuers to disclose more information to consumers, which they should, but at the same time, it should also be you understanding that what if we didn't have these authorities, right? I mean, what does that put you? Where does that put you in the boat, right? So you still got to use your brain. So it's good to have guidelines, not enforcements. In this case, I would look at these being more like guidelines, but to call them regulations ends up taking the responsibility away from the consumer.
They talk
Financial
about that in the
education.
PDF.
hmm So financial education and then consumer choice. I don't know when when you're forcing disclosure, I think you actually take away consumer choice, in my opinion, because then the consumer is just gonna go with the flow, right? So, but people are retarded, so it's all good. Um, but uh, but yeah,
Let me
I
get
mean,
back to it here.
now that we got a little bit of a transitive property, what do you think about that, Andrew? Before we continue into the video,
Well, I mean, it really
yo,
depends on who, yo, uh, it depends on, who you're talking about. People who really are indifferent, they just don't want to think about it and sign the paperwork, or you want people who, want to make sure they have everything as, honest as possible, or people who are, aggressively trying to, game the system for whatever little advantage they can get. It really depends,
are you saying they're
even
all
if they're not going to
communists?
win. Well, I mean, it's very very likely,
They're all communists in their own right. Everybody's a commie until they're not a commie.
right? Welcome to the
So,
corners of anarcho-capitalism versus the rest of the political compass.
whoa, dude, slow your goddamn roll. I'm gonna have to say 3 Hail Marys and an Our Father because of that. Um, have your little ANCAP society. I'll be in the background selling drugs in the back alleys, and there ain't gonna be nothing you can do about it.
You damn agorist.
I'm gonna be selling primed beef and corn, fresh from the off the farm, in the back alley corner streets of New York City. I'm coming
Hmm.
from Maryland to sell to the New Yorkers in Ancapistan.
I'll be sure
Agri,
to get in
agri,
contact with my mutualist friend. We'll
yeah,
have a
yeah.
middleman.
We'll always have a middleman, dude. It's always good when Agorist and ANCAPs work together with a mutual correspondent.
So we get back into the reading.
Let's get right back into it. Enough jokes.
Okay. What was that? Was known as behavioral law and economics, applies to the insights gleaned from studies of human behavior to improve existing institutions by designing rules to compensate for or take advantage of behavioral biases. Starting from the premise that that observed choices are inconsistent with neoclassical theory, Behavioral economics argue that the intervention is necessary to generate desirable outcomes for consumers who would otherwise make poor choices. It is useful and imperative at the outset to distinguish between behavioral economics and behavioral law and economic research. In this paper, we use the terms to distinguish between distinct concepts. We use the term behavioral economics to refer to the underlying economic and behavioral science research program of hypothesis testing to identify and to possibly to qualify actual consumer behavior. We use the term behavioral law and economics, BLE, to describe the effort to take the biases identified by BE scholars and to operationalize them into normative prescriptions for judges and regulators. That we take the findings of the BE as given concurrent purposes should not be read to imply that we endorse the validity of robustness of these conclusions. Despite its early triumphalism, much
Triumphant.
doubt from it's a little hard to read this. I can't zoom in. Much doubt remains about the validity and importance
I mean,
of
I
BE
can
insights.
see, dude. I mean, what is this? A post for ants?
Yes, right. I'm sorry, I can't zoom in any more than I already have. Especially in describing real world versus laboratory behavior. Kahneman, for example, pointed out in its terse communication to scholars within the field of priming that lack of replication and a major source of difficulties in the social sciences in general and psychology in particular, indicating a looming train wreck for the fields, and the problem remained unaddressed. Studies such as Zieler and Plot, 2004, show how even the previously widely accepted findings such as endowment effect are subject to misidentification errors and design problems. We also take as given that these reported biases may have material effects on market efficiency or distributional outcomes, and are already ameliorated or corrected by lower cost markets and private ordering mechanisms, and thus have policy relevance. Second, we assume in this paper that identified behavior biases are not only valid in the abstract, but that can be operationalized as a theoretical matter in practice. Thus, for example, we assume that not only do consumers suffer from an optimism bias, but it's actually possible to determine if in what context these biases will operate or not operate. In practice, this will often be impossible. For example, Zywick observes a purported optimism bias could lead consumers to either oversave or undersave for retirement, and to inefficiently select fixed rate or adjustable rate mortgages, depending on which context and how powerful the biases are assumed to be. Nor does BLE offer any testable hypothesis to determine in which context various biases will operate. It instead offers little more than ad hoc, just so stories about purported welfare losses to consumers. However, we assume the regulators can overcome this often insufferable hurdle. I mean, it's already starting to fall apart, and we're only like 4 pages in. Sorry, 5 pages in. We focus on the third context, the institutional environment in which BE assumptions are operationalized into BLE-friendly policies. The findings of BE largely derive from laboratory findings devoid of real-world institutional environment. A variety of obstacles stand between theory and practice. Coordinated failures, third-party influences or intervention, poor institutions, corruption, and simply unknown all represent realistic considerations that our policymakers must anticipate. Boetke, I don't know, I don't speak Italian, at all, have pointed out that BLE puts the cart before the horse in prescribing policy based upon laboratory behavior studies without taking into account the actual context of the policy area. Content versus context, like the video we watched a couple months ago. The show has They show how behavioral approaches resemble previous efforts to curtail market activity based on deviations for theoretical optimal conditions, such as in welfare economics and antitrust law. They further point out that finding deviations from a theoretical optimum does not, in and of itself, justify market intervention. Without understanding the nested context in which their insights will be embedded, theorists risk encouraging activities that little resembles what they really want. Bergen 2011 has found that the vast majority of behavioral policy propositions in leading economic journals do not even apply the study before the study behavioral bias to their policymaker. Therefore, it is essentially prudent that once BLE is operational, analysts follow up their prescribed solutions with empirical demonstrations that the relevant uh, if, institutional fixes effectively address the problems originally identified. Without this confirmation, there is little to justify ongoing intervention into market activities, even if the underlying research supports behavioral fixes. The ultimate gauge of policy effectiveness is its successful application to real world settings. While BLE has a questionable track record in dealing with these obstacles, it is this latter consideration of empirical support of institutional fixes that we address by examining recent behavioral interventions in the area of consumer finance. Policymakers have already begun to use behavioral insight as foundations for interventionist policy. As Wright 2011 maintains, BLE played a significant role in the creation of the CFPB, page 2220, exposing its meteoric. Yeah,
You are skipping all over the place, but
I know.
hold
I'm
your
sorry.
thought on.
You can
Hold
forgive me.
hold that.
It's a little
Hold,
hard to read this.
yeah, you need to get a second monitor. So do I. But before we continue on talking about the policymakers, I got another. I just while you were reading, I'm messing with
Yeah.
this AI in the background and asking questions, and this is what the AI gives me when I ask, why do government agencies take responsibility away from the consumer and treat human beings as if they are immature children? Venice goes on to respond, saying this phenomenon is often referred to as regulatory capture or paternalism. It's a complex issue that with multiple factors at play, but I'll try to break it down. Government agencies, especially those in the regulatory realm, may take responsibility away from consumers and treat them as immature children for several reasons. One, protectionism. Do I really need to go into detail? Especially if you're a libertarian or liberty-esque, you understand what protectionism is. Um, Institutional knowledge. Government agencies often have vast knowledge and expertise in specific domains. Not going to question that because typically they try to capture the best in the academic fields of different sciences and knowledges and economics and psychology, etc. So I'm not going to argue that. They may assume that their understanding is superior to that of consumers. Don't have to tell me twice. Who might not have the necessary background or experience, which is the truth, because most people, their purview in society is one of two things: get by and raise their family. Actually, and get by. I'm going to rephrase that: pay their bills and raise their family. Um, the other is power dynamics. Regulators may wield significant power and influence over industries. Think about fascism, private public partnerships, which can lead to
Corporate
paternalistic
socialism.
corporate socialism. Think about the minimum wage laws, which can lead to paternalistic attitude towards consumers. This can result in consumers being treated as dependents rather than capable decision makers. The lack of transparency. Regulatory processes can be opaque, making it difficult for consumers to fully understand the implications of regulations, aka legalese. They don't expect you to be able to read it fully. They don't expect you to understand it. They just expect you to understand effectively the headline of it. Uh, this lack of transparency, which is dumbing down your source information, can lead to regulators to make decisions on behalf of consumers without necessarily consulting or involving them. Special interest groups. Do I really need to go into that? And bureaucratic red tape. Uh, I don't really need to go into that either. I mean, however, this approach can have unintended consequences, such as disempowering consumers. By taking responsibility away from consumers, regulators may inadvertently disempower them, making it more difficult for them to participate in the regulatory process or make informed decisions. Think think the 2020 fiasco, um,
Mhm.
2020 fiasco. Inefficient regulation. Overly prescriptive regulations can stifle innovation and efficiency, ultimately harming consumers in the long run. And the lack of accountability. When regulators make decisions on behalf of consumers, they may not be held accountable for the consequences of their own decisions. To address these issues, it's essential to promote a more consumer centric approach. So that could be, let's involve consumers, right? Let's provide transparency. Let's foster competition, which in itself empowers the consumer. If you allow for more competition, and allow the market to regulate it upon itself through competitive measures, the consumer has a choice in the matter, for which and whom they want to conduct business with. Whom do they want to consume their product or their service from? So regulators should promote that competition and innovation, as Venice AI says, rather than stifling it with overly restrictive regulations, for which would empower the consumers by providing consumers with the tools and knowledge they need. Regulators can empower them to make informed decisions and make responsibility for their own lives. But yet, we have something like the CFPB that utilizes behavioral economics in the with the ability to stifle you into your own decision making. It forces you to obey the government effectively. You are stupid. It is social engineering if you really want to think about it.
That's what we were talking about in last week's video. Let me go ahead and go back to it.
Mark drops parabilin. Yes. Uh, go go search out pair and is it pair or peer?
Per.
I don't
Per violin.
per Bylan. See,
Like a
I
kitty
feel
cat.
like such an
Per.
asshole. But yeah,
Uh,
I mean, go search. He has a number of articles out there. He has a number of books that you can check out and read.
I'll pick
So
up.
Mark also states talked about regulations on drop the mask in my shows. Actually, yes. Speaking of that, check out Drop the Mask and Not Conscious, and then every Thursday at 7 p.m. On over on YouTube, X, Rumble, and then it drops uh, Consciously Unmasked. It's Mark and Jason from Drop the Mask. They come together and they unmask the consciousness of reality. You're no longer knocked conscious. You've effectively dropped the mask. You've unmasked yourself. You're thinking consciously. Uh, but check out both those podcasts. Very intriguing. We're all nobodies here, so we got to promote each and every one of everybody. Because the more that we help each other, the more that we can hopefully get the information out there, and everybody else can share that content. So going on, Mark, the seen, the unseen, and the unrealized, how regulations affect our everyday lives, which is a great uh, dissertation into the market by Per Bylan, his book. So that is definitely definitely something that you should read. He also has the his economic primer that you should definitely read, because when I read it, it felt like I was reading Human Action for the retards, because I'm retarded. And if you actually know Human Action or have actually read Human Action by Mises, good luck. Just good luck. So, and Pear actually does a good job in his economic primer that he released 2 years ago, which you can, I think both of those books you can actually go download for free as a free ebook on Mises. So go download it, go print it out. You have the book free.
The
So,
criterion is truth is that it works even no one is prepared to believe.
so,
My favorite
but,
Mises quote.
but anyways,
But
Andrew,
let's pick it back
let's
up.
dive.
Just a second.
Let's dive into it.
Exposing. Yep, it is free. Exposing its meiotic emergencies in the legislative and regulatory spheres. Nevertheless, the dangers inherent in this approach are considerable. With respect to emergency regulations, Gayer and Viscasi, I guess, 2012, shows that policies that assume
You
consumer
don't speak Italian.
rationality are cumbersome. I know. Are cumbersome, immune to contrary evidence, and largely ineffective in correcting the very deficiencies that ostensibly seek to redress. We contribute this ongoing discussion by offering insight into the relationship between BLE as a policy prescription platform and the regulations emerging from the CFPB. We show how these regulations are inconsistent with the intent and purpose of improving consumer choices. We further demonstrate that the selective modeling of behavioral bias in the BLE framework causes an overestimation of the abilities of regulators who in actuality use ineffective, heavy-handed rules based upon little, if any, real empirical findings of consumer irrationality, quote unquote. Accordingly, the broader lessons of the misapplication of behavioral economics goes beyond the ill-considered policies emerging from the CFPB. This paper offers guidelines to academics, policymakers, and other interested parties on the applications of policies based on behavioral findings. In particular, we attempt to show the following. Number one, political realities belie the attempts of behavioral theorists to construct policy corrections. Number two, actual political decision-making is susceptible to a number of distorting influences, most importantly, bureaucratic overreach, behavioral bias on the part of policymakers, and the lack of appropriate information regarding consumer choices. Number three, bureaucrats do not hold the same preferences for about political outcomes as behavioral theorists do. They are affected by self-interest like anyone else, which can cause deviations from the prescribed policy measures. Number four, regulators based on behavioral findings tend to lean towards heavier forms of intervention that eliminate viable alternative forms of exchange, thus impeding innovation and creating creativity in the marketplace. This in turn limits the overall amount of market activity, in this case, consumer credit. Number five, policymakers are unlikely to incorporate evidence-based analysis into their decision-making in a manner consistent with the scientific method. Instead, policymakers are susceptible to confirmation bias in elevating evidence. We first build on the operationalization of BLE by offering a brief history of the transition of behavioral economics into proactive policy prescriptions. We segue from this history to focus on the operationalization of certain policies into the area of consumer finances offered by prominent behavioral theorists Thaler and Sunstein in their book Nudge: Improving Decisions About Health, Wealth, and Happiness. We then delve into the origins of the current activities of the CFPB. We analyze each of the activities outlined to show how the CFPB departs from the BLE framework. We conclude by offering several policy solutions that might better bridge the gap between BLE and successful policy initiatives. And then go to section 2. Do you want to keep reading, Zach, or what do you want to do?
Section 2. What is Section 2 about? It looks like it is
Oh,
behavioral biases in
behavioral
public
biases and
policy. So
yeah.
that actually is something that we probably should delve a little bit into, because I think that's the concept of what we're trying to capture, trying to encapsulate on this episode of. So let's continue reading. Actually, let's jump into Section 2.
Okay. Behavioral biases and public policies. Starting with the seminal pieces by Tversky and Kahneman. I'm sorry, it's just funny. Behavioral economics arrives like a thunderclap to the domain of neoclassical economics. Considering virtual hearsay at the time, the two psychologists claimed to show that people were indeed not as rational as hyper rational, calculating utility maximizing machines that was a Homo economicus. Instead, people displayed deficiencies in the judgment that soon came to be known as, under various labels, representativeness heuristics, availability bias, status quo bias, time inconsistency, loss aversion, confirmation bias, etc. Already a deep skeptical profession, the dismal scientific scientists were loathing to give up their predispositions towards a fully rational agent as the benchmark of human behavior. Armed with a more thorough set of examination or experimental design tools, and unlike most experimental experiments in psychology, actual cash motivated subjects, Grenther and Plot, 1979, set out to overturn the pesky results found by a couple of wayward psychologists. In a shocking turn of events, however, the two economists found the very results presented by Tversky and Kahneman. Even when subjects were properly motivated and design parameters sufficiently controlled, the debate would never again be the same. Fast forward to the 1990s. By then, although much controversy remained on the validity of the underlying BE research, the soon findings of BE began to be translated into BELE policy recommendations. The field of BLE transformed the body of evidence found in a laboratory study into a set of guidelines for real world policy. While some have questioned the internal consistency of their framework, given that any number of policy suggestions can emerge from its assumptions. See, for example, Zwinski, 2013b. Legal scholars have increasingly used the assumptions as a foundation for their own analysis. See Wright, 2007.
Zelensky. I don't think I like that name.
Oh yeah, man. I'd see at the end of the video if he has anything to say about it.
Well,
Sunstein,
Zelensky. Yeah.
Sunstein, 1997, was formative in their regard by positioning the results of behavioral economics in a way that began to influence policy. He outlined three different tasks for behavioral scholars: positive, prescriptive, and normative. Positive analysis is, of course, the bread and butter of experimental economic research, and it involves proselytizing refutable hypotheses that can then be tested in the laboratory. Prescriptive work involves guiding policymakers towards standard objectives, such as the field of law and economics. BLE attempts to show how to achieve better outcomes through the legal and political process. What constitutes better is determined by the final task, that of normative work. By discovering the errors people commonly make, behavioral theorists can propose uh, improvements to decision making that could conceivably cause people to make better choices. Sunstein also touched upon the problem of public officials exercising authority under the same bias as their private brethren. He explained, none of these.
Hold on. Better choices. So they want to assume that people on their own right can't make decisions for their own selves.
Sounds like it.
So I mean, honestly, to take off of that, this looks like a job for township liberation. Down below, go get that book. Actually, the case revival of let me learn how to speak. Revival of Common Sense: The Case for Town Liberation, uh, by Thomas Decentralized. You can get it on Amazon. Not today though, because remember, we can't buy anything today because the shit lives want us to defy the market. So,
But I was going to buy some crypto later.
well, I mean, I guess theoretically that's still under the table. So you can still buy the crypto. So, but township liberation, in my opinion, is how you rectify this and bring back the decision making of a core individual, um, by not allowing government bureaucracy to have a say. You basically just nullify it, man. Because as I asked Venice, what I mean, why is township liberation the only way to force authoritarian forces to capitulate to market practices? Well, it gives me the list. I mean, you got a common core of decentralization, organizational capacity, social capital. What does that mean? Township liberation movements often rely on social capital, such as trust, cooperation, and solidarity amongst community members. You're going back to the community, you're getting together locally. So, the social capital can be a powerful force in challenging authoritarian systems. Just look at, like, say, when we talked with Mike Decentralized, what Huntington Beach, California, has been doing to nullify certain laws in the books, that the state of California and Sacramento attempts to levy against the rest of the populace. And, in fact, I mean, Huntington Beach has gone as far as, while the state in whole doesn't want you to prove that that you are a cooperating legal citizen of voting, they enforce that you need to have identification. Why? Because we want to make sure that there's integrity in the election system. That's why democracy's horrible, by the way, everybody, because there is no integrity. But the local knowledge, I mean, we discussed that. It's going back to the community, institutional innovation, township liberation movements often involve the creation of new institutions and practice that challenge traditional authoritarian systems. You're challenging the bureaucracy, nonviolent resistance. You're literally just utilizing strategies. I joked about the economic boycott that's going on today, but that's one strategy. Boycotts, sit-ins, civil disobedience. Forms of civil disobedience could be coalition building on your local level, and getting people, from all sectors of the political atmosphere, in line to vote in certain laws that dissipate, or challenge, laws that you don't necessarily agree with. I mean, so on and so forth. But that is, in my opinion, why a town liberation strategy is a brilliant concept. So, get that book down there, scrolling right there. Revival of Common Sense: The Case for Township Liberation. So that's all I had. I wanted to add that. Continue on, Andrew.
Okay, well, before I do, I just have one comment. Zach asked Venice. I asked Jeeves. Anyways,
You
uh,
it's asked you. Does that even exist anymore?
ask.com does still exist.
But it's not Ask Jeeves.
No, it's just ask.com, unfortunately. I got to find where I was.
Hmm.
Oh, I know where I was at. Okay. I'll just start at the very last paragraph here. Sunstein also touches upon the problem of public officials exercising authority under the same biases as their private brethren. He explains, none of these points makes a firm case for legal paternalism, particularly since bureaucrats may be subject to the same cognitive
That's
and motivational distortions
hold
as
on.
everyone
I just want
else.
to laugh. I just want to laugh at this because I believe Mark is correct. sex.com was the first site sold. Is that true,
I'm
Andrew?
not surprised.
You're
I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, sex sells, so it makes
It
sense.
does. It does. I gotta. I'll tell the story some other time. None of the
Oh,
points.
nonsense. This is you got to be an open book, man. What's this story? I'm intrigued now. I think
Anybody
the
who's
audience.
ever used web TV knows that it's an old platform. When I was a kid, I was asked, or I was trying to show something to my mom, no, my grandma, at her
Oh,
house
no.
on web TV, and we were trying to pull up dicksportinggoods.com, and well,
Oh,
I had
no.
the wrong website. Anyways, let's go.
Oh, no. Oh my! So you tried to go to Dick's Sporting Goods. You tried to bring that up, and you
Eh,
got a
Shut
nice
shut that down.
fiasco.
Shut that down. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Anyways,
it couldn't have been as worse as if you watched the movie, the Lars von Trier movie, I almost said Necro, Nymphomaniac. Uh, there's a scene towards the end, closer towards the end of the movie. You come back, it draws you back into the film, and it's literally just, it's probably like 5 minutes of just showing a bunch of dick sizes.
you would know
It's
that, wouldn't you?
I mean, I've seen the movie. I mean, I'm comfortable in saying like it's not going to bother me. It's like I'm not whatever. I mean, it's just really weird. It's like, and for somebody that has an issue that well, oh my fuck, I ain't no fucking faggot. Oh, excuse me. But some people would probably take issue to that. Like, but I mean, it was just gravitating towards the concept of what the movie was trying to draw out. So it's actually a really good movie. I would look that up. Just be prepared because Lars von Trier is a psychological genius. It's an art house film, everybody.
So who nudges here and who shoves? That's the question. Let's get back to the program. None of these points make a firm case for legal paternalism, particularly since bureaucrats may be subject. Can't read that.
The original owner of Sex.com was Match.com founder Gary Creeman, who sold the name in 2006. He first registered it in 1994, but lost control to conman Stephen Cohen. I wonder if conman Stephen Cohen is related to conman in this PDF, and waged a
Could
long
be.
legal battle. That's hilarious. Business as usual, I guess. That is actually quite hilarious. Go on, Andrew. Sorry, that was just.
You're good. It's just like that episode of King of the Hill where Boomhauer's been trying to read the same article for 20 minutes.
Right? Was that a good Boohauer? That was close enough.
Dang it. I've been trying to read the same article on vintage Camaros for the last 20 minutes.
What?
Bureaucrats may be
Robin?
subject to the same cognitive motivational distortions as everyone else, but they do suggest that objections to paternalism should be empirical and pragmatic, having to do with the possibility of education and likely failures of government response, rather than a priority in nature. Hence, positive works must extend to the world of policymaking itself. Otherwise, it is not clear that prescription is valid if the policymaker is himself biased. Then this could distort the outcome away from what is intended by the theorists. Building off Sunstein's framework, Joel, Sunstein, and Thaler, 1998, further expand on the notion of anti-paternalism. They claim that while traditional law in economics is reluctant to cede authority to the government actors in correcting consumer choices, their reluctance is founded on the assumptions of consumer sovereignty. That is, the consumers are capable of making rational, informed decisions. If this assumption is invalid, and this reluctance is no longer justified. Instead, the merits of paternalism should be considered an empirical and pragmatic matter. This nominative claim is explained upon in Sunstein and Thaler, 2003, who now labeled this movement with the far catchier name of libertarian paternalism, as they show ceding
Wait,
authority to government actors.
wait, what? Libertarian paternalism?
That's what they say.
What the
As
hell
they
does that
show,
even mean?
ceding authority to government actors need not be paternalistic in a hard sense. Instead, authority figures can typically nudge consumers in the right direction through a soft intervention measures, such as changing default choices, using simpler information, framing choices differently, and so forth. These papers eventually gave birth to the runway success for Nudge, which success for, of Nudge, which offered a buffet of behavioral-minded policies from which to choose. Kahneman describes Nudge in his equally successful book Thinking Fast and Slow as the basic manual for applying behavioral economics to policy. Kahneman, 2011, 372. Given the influence of Nudge, it is a reasonable place to begin on examinations of the impact BLE has had on the area of consumer financial protection. Section 3, you want to say anything before I start?
Yeah. Speaking of, let's go over a little bit of this. So, examples of social engineering, because you mentioned nudging, right? So, the examples of such would be a social engineering factor. Um, Nudges are that of how the government influences people's behavior, which effectively is exactly what the CFPB is doing with their policies and their guidelines and their non legislative rules, regulations, and laws, right? So, defaulting on automatic enrollment in retirement savings plans or organ donation actually, yeah, like for in enforcing businesses to uh, have to offer some sort of 401k plan or some sort of retirement savings plan for their employees, or establishing an organ donation statute with your license. Now that's obviously it's still considered on a voluntary measure. You don't have to go dive into either or. Although I've noticed, depending on where you're working in the job field, some companies will automatically enroll you into a 401k or a 403b program. Organ donation, like on your driver's license, you enter the program, and then you can have it show on your license. That's voluntary, but effectively that's you're promoting positivity, right? Positive law. Public health campaigns. Oh no. Oh no. No, 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 no. Governments
We'll
have
be here
used
all week.
social we'll be here all week on this one, but governments have used social engineering tactics to promote public health, such as the anti-smoking campaign, and campaigns to promote, oh no, oh no, the V word. Uh, Economic incentives. Governments have used economic incentives such as tax credits or subsidies to encourage certain behaviors, choosing winners and losers when it comes to businesses, or granting certain tax credits or subsidies for families, depending on the number of kids you have or how old they are, and if you can pick them as dependents, which you can pick them as dependents as long as they're under 18, obviously, um, to encourage certain behaviors, such as investing in renewable energy or purchasing electric vehicles. Um, and then, of course, propaganda. The government uses propaganda to shape public opinion and influence behavior. Uh, Obviously, that war or conflict of emergency is a big part of the propaganda scheme. That's why we're always constantly in some sort of wartime scenario. Um, so, It's all social engineering and the capacity of how governments operate, their agencies operate. It's to fulfill this positive niche that you need to be guided like the cattle you are from pasture back to the fence line of the barn, of the farm. We're cattle. Isn't that sad? We're basically cattle. We're not even slaves, dude. We're cattle. We're livestock, man. I would much rather be a black African slave with some sort of privilege, depending on the plantation and the planter owner that I have, than to be cattle. Because you really only have two phases for cattle: beef or milk.
Now, I
That's it.
saw a video the other day of a cow being driven in a car down the highway. I'll have to pull that up for next episode.
A cow driving down the highway? I've seen those too,
It
man.
was in the back seat, yeah.
No, just kidding. I understand that many people believe that a peaceful solution or a ceasefire is a good idea, but we risk that peace in Ukraine in actually more dangerous than the war that is ongoing now.
I mean,
Fredericks, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen. So 1984 levels of propaganda. 1984 is being turned into reality. Yeah, and it has a lot to do with this.
it is. A second, let me go ahead and put that full screen here. Peace is war. Yeah. Protecting consumers. In Chapter 8 of Nudge, Thaler and Sunstein detail the troubles and troubles and travails of the mortgage market using their behavioral
I'm
framework.
sorry. Troubles with tribbles? Oh, those tribbles were
travails.
those tribbles were adorable.
Yeah, well, a little hard to
But
read,
don't
like I
mess
said,
with
so
them.
you get to
They
forgive me on
breed
this.
like
I
hey
only
man,
speak Italian here.
the
Uh,
tribbles breed. They breed like no other. They took over the ship, man. They started
yeah,
with a
and then
few, and then all of a sudden the ship was overrun by tribbles.
and now they
Thus,
own
trouble with
X.com.
tribbles. Tribbles, man. You need to watch Star Trek.
I know. I'm
Continue.
sorry.
Fuck.
And travails of the mortgage market. Using their behavioral framework, they claim that consumers of credit are often ignorant of the costs of their choices. This is particularly true when more complex forms of mortgage loans, such as those with variable interest rates, exotic products such as interest-only loans, uh, uh, yeah, and teaser traits where interest remains low for a certain number of years, then dramatically increases. If consumers are indeed cognitively limited, like me reading this, then their more complex forms have the potential to prey on those who are more susceptible to manipulation, such as lower income households. The solution, they ask? Thaler and Sunstein argue that their recap plan should be employed where consumers are alerted to easy to follow information to allow them to record, evaluate, and compare alternative prices. Transferred into policy prescriptions, mortgage companies should be required to offer a simple synopsis of the loan conditions, detailing things like expected interest rates by year, worst case scenarios under the particular loan, and all fees, teaser rates, variable interest provisions, etc. up front. In other words, better choice architecture leads to better choices. Now, if you think about it, that's kind of like what they're doing right now with the nutrition label, where they're trying to deal with like upfront information for like internet service providers. They're trying to implement that across the board. Now let me go back to reading it. Their policy prescriptions certainly could improve consumer choices if their underlying assumptions are true. But what might get in their way of effectively implementing such policy? In Chapter 17, Thaler and Sunstein offer a number of responses to challenges often proposed against the behavioral interventions. We have outlined three that are particularly pertinent to the subject of consumer financial protection and CFPB. First is the slippery slope argument, which claims that allowing for soft intrusive behaviors will inevitably give way to harder intrusive behaviors. Or put another way, a nudge will become a shove. Thaler and Sunstein responded that nudges should first be judged on their own merits before invoking the slippery slope argument. They also show how several of their chosen nudges provide a steep slope for those who would attempt to transform soft paternalism into hard paternalism. Finally, they argue that a default position is required in many choice contexts. Hence, avoiding the behavioral intervention on the basis of slippery slope concerns may very well give way to an initial default of hard paternalism anyways. The next objective is the idea that public officials will become corrupt and in turn use nudges for private advantage. Thaler and Sunstein offer two responses. First, public officers and private entrepreneurs both may be tempted to gain from private advantage. So any attribution, any 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 attribution of villainous motives should be applied equally. Yeah, right. Should be applied equally across both spheres. Second, they argue that their nudges instead instill greater transparency into choice architecture and hope that their transparency will permeate further into political discourse through publicly reported votes, earmarked legislation items, and contributions from lobbyists. Finally, they discussed the question of neutrality and where public officials are in a position to know what is best for those doing the choosing. Here they appeal to expertise. They argue that decisions in which much is being required from the chooser, such as in choosing a mortgage plan, experts exist who would better be able to choose on behalf of the chooser than the chooser themselves. They acknowledge that the experts may be self-interested, but conclude that conflict of interest could be spotted ex ante and avoided. Sunstein 2013 expands upon and supplements the list of breaking paternalism challenges into 5 broad areas of concern: informational, competitive, heterogeneity, learning, and public choices. Briefly,
come on, Joe.
Yes.
Stop stuttering, Joe.
I'm sorry.
Stuttering
That's a lot of reading.
Stuttering Stanley.
But it's important, man. Briefly, these refer to the concerns that information is most.
It's important for you to stutter like Joe Biden.
Well, I mean, if I'm going to run for president one day, I gotta get in the role.
Hell yeah, corn pop.
Briefly, these refer to the concern that information is most readily at hand at the local level, and therefore public officials are at a disadvantage in utilizing the best information available. Intervention in the markets are intentionally or unintentionally tends to solidify competition. This can ultimately reduce welfare, even if the intervention improves choices. Further, consumers are heterogeneous and any intervention must account for the fact that the market may support multiple preferences at any one time. Political interference tend to reduce this distinction. Market actors also learn from their mistakes. So if a behavioral problem presents itself, it is not a given that the consumer will fail to recognize the problem and correct for it in time. Finally, echoing the public choice concerned above, Sunstein acknowledges against the public officials are both subject to influence by special interest groups and susceptible to the same biases that consumers they govern. Thaler and Sunstein lay down a gauntlet to potential skeptics by emphasizing the need for empirical verifications that behavioral interventions are found wanting, while acknowledging the considerable challenges BLE faces. They argue that that in itself does not overwhelm the potential benefit that comes with improving choice architecture for the consumer. We agree that Thaler and Sunstein that policy success is an empirical matter. We now proceed to show how BLE fails to improve welfare in the areas of consumer financial regulations. You want to comment or anything, Zach?
Comment about what? Actually, let's comment about that
Before I
because
go on to the next section.
yeah, because it mentions in there uh welfare, right?
Yeah,
The establishment of helping to establish welfare systems in place, correct? So we're talking
yeah,
about behavioral economics and how to incentivize people into faceting their choices by not making choices, correct?
yeah.
So let's talk about what welfare does to society. Let's gravitate away from this for a moment and let's talk about why welfare is a decadence on the social parameters of our world today. Yeah, that's right. Um, welfare in itself, not only it creates a dependency apparatus. So you no longer, when you're gaining access to government assistance or support from other factors. Doesn't necessarily have to be the government. You can have welfare parameters set in place outside of government, like within your family. Whenever you're leeching, whenever you're not going and taking responsibility for your own self. So, but when it comes to government, individuals rely on government assistance rather than seeking employment or developing skills to improve their economic situation. So you're going to be stuck in a rut. You're not going to actually want to put forth effort in your life to better yourself. Inefficient allocation of resources. Welfare programs can be inefficient in allocating resources as they often focus on providing immediate relief rather than addressing the underlying causes of poverty or financial struggles. And poverty is a baseline. That is a baseline of humanity. We all start poor. It's up to you on how you're going to live your life and work towards bettering yourself. I mean, developing skills. It doesn't matter what skill that is. And I mean, we live in a more modern so skills can be uh, promoted within, like, say, the computer sciences orient, like coding, right? Or you can go as basic as knowing how to hunt, knowing how to build structures, knowing how to uh, garden and build and grow your own crop, knowing how to cook, et cetera, right? So you're limiting yourself to not having the ability to want to even learn those skills because it's all going to be handed to you. But in effect, what happens when that relief ends up drying out? It's a short-term effect for a long-term problem. And the long-term problem is going to be catastrophic when you no longer can have the funds attainable to actually help you. You also have and we see this through all of declining civilizations in the history. I mean, look at Rome, for example, or Greece when talking about the West, even the British Empire as it was declining. Um, but look at our society today. It's the American Empire, and its monetary monopoly comes to a standstill. Welfare program. It's all moral hazard, immoral behavior, right? Welfare programs can create a moral hazard where individuals may take risks or engage in behaviors that they wouldn't otherwise, knowing that they will be supported by the government if they encounter difficulties. Work incentives, I think I've already discussed that, but welfare programs create a disincentive for individuals to be able to go and seek the employment needed or develop skills to better their lives because you're gaining. Why should I go work when I can just sit on my ass and play video games all day and get a check every month, right? So
Can I comment on that real
stigma,
quick?
go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Well, when you have welfare, you outsource the role of the father to the state, right? And so,
Yep.
like you was talking about, there's no moral grandstanding to be self-sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
There's only ask for help and never
Yeah.
help yourself. That's just all I want to
Yeah.
comment.
Oh no, no, and you're exactly correct. And in that case, it goes to number 5 on this list: stigma and social isolation, because that's exactly what that ends up causing, right? It causes some sort of stigma. Okay, father's out of the household. You have more single mothers, which means you have more single mothers that are going to have to work. Not only gain access to government assistance, which eventually you're just going to wither away and just say, "To hell with it. I'll just take the assistance and scrape by." But you have those that are on government assistance while working multiple jobs just to survive, right? In their shithole project housing or whatever, what have you. And that takes the ability of raising the kids to be more sustainable in their own right and more responsible. So and you forget about that. You forget about what the psychological aspect of what welfare and enforced poverty effectively brings to society and families, and not having both parents in the household. Um, and there's always outliers. You can always There's people that come out of that system with only one parent that really didn't uh, raise them because they probably couldn't, or from other reasons, or they just didn't want to. Um, and they're fine. They learn to be better than the situation that they were brought into. And then there are people that were raised in a simple old 1950s style nuclear family with both parents and the dog and the brother and sister, and they end up becoming uh, trailer trash. So those
Well,
are outliers. But go ahead,
there's
Isaiah.
also Paul Levesque, Triple H. They say his
There is
parents
also
were like golden. They were his
well,
golden parents. So now
he was adopted though.
he's well. I'm just saying, like he's head booker at WWE or whatever
It,
TKO group.
yeah. Exactly. So, yeah, head of content yeah, I think he's the content
Head of
create,
content creation. Yeah.
yeah, head of content creation. Yep. So, lack of personal responsibility, we already gone over that. Inefficient use of taxpayer dollars. You're basically being eventually the premium's going to have to go up, and the taxpayers are going to have a higher set of money that they're being robbed. So taxation is theft, and the theft is going to just get even greater. And then next thing you know, the programs are getting so big, so expensive, so expansive, because you have more people that are just saying, "Screw this," and just falling in line, and you have more of a welfare pool, right? We already
Look at Ayn Rand's
discussed the.
dad. He said
Hmm,
he wasn't going to work because he didn't see the point in it if they're going to take everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, Ayn Rand in general. I mean, she died on welfare. When she died, she ended up
Like father, like
succumbing
daughter.
to exactly. So, limited focus on
Well,
education and job training. We've already discussed that, and a negative impact on economic growth, because when you're allowing people to be more dependent on programs such as welfare, on government assistance, you're not going to have a growing market of competition, cooperation, ingenuity, innovation, because nobody's developing skills, nobody's being entrepreneurial. They're all just sitting on their ass, like I said earlier. They're all pretty much they've given up. They're just sitting on their ass, theoretically playing video games and getting a check every month. So,
to
but yeah,
to be to
that's
be fair, Ayn Rand's dad was forced to not go to work. They took his business away.
that's you got a point. That's another thing is when you start seeing more regulations out of government that de-incentivizes competitive growth, and so they choose winners and losers, right? So you start
That's what
seeing
we're reading
less
in
and
this
less.
PDF.
Mm-hmm. So they start you start seeing more business practices in effect only rely on larger corps that are in line with government partnerships, subsidies, contracts, and so you relegate the smaller and the medium businesses out. You eliminate it, and then you have this excess pool of people that have nothing to do. What do you expect they're going to do? They're forced to either one, they were business owners, but do you really think they're going to go work for the man effectively? Most people, why would you why would you down I can't even think of
Downgrade.
the word, man. Downgrade yourself. I'm an idiot. Why would you downgrade yourself by becoming just a worker bee when yeah, so many of them do end up joining into the ranks of becoming welfare recipients. So it would make sense. You lose your
Yeah.
business and you end up on government assistance.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Well, let's go. Hold on a second. Put it in full screen here.
Yes, there are, Mark.
All right. Enter the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We turned the political reality of consumer protection into a form of one of Washington's newest agencies, the CFPB. The CFPB was initiated as part of the broader Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, itself a reaction to the financial crisis that occurred late in the first decade of the 21st century. As originally conceived by then Professor Elizabeth Warren, the framework for the CFPB was grounded largely in old-style consumer protection and in the rising financial crisis. Soon, however, the concurrent streams of heightened calls for increased consumer protection and the academic surge of BLE crossed, leading advocates to the new agency to hitch themselves to the BLE research agency or agenda. Durkin et al. In Chapter 9, 2014. Thus, Barr, Grill, and Warren, 2008, formalized the Warren's earlier calls for the new agencies, grounding its rationale squarely in behavioral economics. In their article, the authors put the question to consumer rationality first and foremost in criticizing the efficacy of consumer financial markets. They argued that imperfect rationality exacerbates much of the underlying problems in these markets, claiming consumers are unaware that they are uninformed. The further Buttress, Thaler, and Sunstein's claim, or they further Buttress, Thaler, and Sunstein's claim that framing efforts have much to do with suboptimal outcomes. Barr, and Warren, 2008, page 42. They argue that sellers are well aware of the shortcomings of consumer rationality and indeed exploit those weaknesses to gain greater profits. Page 46. For example, they argue that consumers fail to switch to new credit cards once the initial introduction rate offers end due to the inertia of the part of the consumer. They state there is clearly a psychological inertia component reflecting in such high switching costs. Page 51. Another example, they argue that consumers suffer from optimism bias and are therefore unlikely to properly estimate their further income streams, which leads them to purchase the exotic mortgage products described by Thaler and Sunstein above, i.e., temporarily low introduction rates with smaller down payments. Finally, they explain that while numerous agencies regulate consumer financial products, either lack of motivation on part of the banking agencies or lack of authority on the part of the Federal Trade Commission prevents these government organizations from preventing the types of exploration exploitation they outline. Instead, they argue that new agencies is needed with both the authority and motivation to carry out proper consumer financial regulations. This recommendation came to fruition when the CFPB opened its doors on July 21st, 2011. It is sustained at the Independent Bureau within the Federal Reserve. Accordingly, it's effectively independent from direct congressional or executive oversight. See Zawinski, 2011. The CFPB states that its mission is to make markets for consumers' financial products and services for work for Americans, whether they are applying for mortgages, choosing among credit cards, or using any number of other consumer financial products. It further insists that, above all, this means ensuring that consumers get the information they need to make the financial decisions they believe are best for themselves and their families. That prices are clear up front, that risks are visible, and that nothing is buried in the fine print. In a market that works, consumers should be able to make direct comparisons amongst products, and no provider should be able to use unfair, deceptive, or abusive practices. In order to ascertain just what is needed in the regulation of consumer finances, the agency claims to use empirical investigation as its primary means of guidance. As Director Richard Corddry said, "We pride ourselves at being on being a 21st century legacy who work whose work is evidence based. So we also conduct our own in-depth studies on consumer financial products, such as reverse mortgages and private student loans. The agency also procures information through public requests, submitting complaints, and general public outreach. So far, so good. The CFPB rhetoric is very much in the spirit of BLE as propounded by Thaler and Sunstein. The agency's emphasis is on a softer form of intervention, such as increasing transparency and general information distillation. Further, its approach is guided by the kind of empirical training that BLE promotes as needed to ascertain the validity of paternalistic measures. Finally, it is well armed with a host of behavioral practices. Its first in-house research appointment was Sindel, that's Italian, sorry, Mulathan, a well-known behavioral theorist, who was soon supported by a research advisory council consisting of a virtual who's who of the behavioral community, including none other than Richard Thaler himself. Although they have done little research on the economics of consumer credit or consumer credit regulations. So what about the CFPB in practice? The CFPB has only been around for 2 years. Still, the agency has offered both guidance and formal regulations in a number of areas. Before analyzing the departure from the BLE framework in detail, we surveyed 3 of these: qualified mortgages, credit card fees, and student loans. In each case, the agency has showed that it is more interested in deciding the appropriate outcome for the market, or an outcome which itself is dominated more by political concerns than by consumer welfare than it is by helping consumers make the choices for themselves. Let me take just a minute in case Zach wants to make any comments.
So hold on. Are you telling me that they promote excessive credit usage? Sorry. Focusing on trying to multitask, everybody. I am retarded. Retard news. If you're not following, follow. But anyways, it's
a co-host of Legacy Right, not Retard News. I guess I'm a co-host of Retard News now.
We are the media now. Retard News. Legacy Right on Retard News. Anyways, it sounds more like the CFP. It sounds
CFPB.
like they are. Yeah. It sounds like they're in promotion of excessive credit card usage, in order to promote debt.
To me, it sounds like pay to play.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Pay to play, put yourself into excess debt, and continuously driving towards this social credit system. We're in it. We just don't have China style.
It just hasn't even upgraded. They're fine tuning it.
They are fine tuning it, and it is getting it's evident that we're getting closer and closer to more of a Chinese style social credit system, but we've always had some sort of social credit, especially when it comes to financial and economic measures. Um, like say credit card reports or within the consumer report, the basis of not being able to attain a mortgage or being denied uh a rental because your credit report is too low, or um not being able to purchase a vehicle because again, finances matter, right? So, and most people have to finance in order to purchase certain necessities like homes, cars, etc., etc. So you may not be able to get a vehicle. So now you're kind of stuck unless there's public transportation. And if you're in an area where there's no public transportation, like in my neck of the woods where there really isn't, then you're kind of just screwed, right?
Yeah.
So, and you can't go and advance further. You can't go and you're kind of stuck in your little bubble. If you want to go get work, then you're just gonna have to go work for the Dollar General down the street because you don't have the ability to drive. Because yeah, so we have those parameters, and that's just a small segment of an example.
I've,
But
I've been in that situation. I've had to, catch an Uber that costs $60 to make $50 for the day. Just to keep my job. Not that it was fun.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But you're retarded though.
Yeah, I know. Retard news.
But so, what are we about ready to jump into on this next segment? And then we
Or
may have
they're
to start
gonna.
wrapping up. But it looks like
Um,
mortgage. We're talking. We're
well,
going to
we're
jump
at
into mortgage.
17. Let's jump to 20, and we'll go to 20, and then we'll call for we could probably pick this up next week if you want to.
We can. Although we pretty much jumped into exactly what uh, this is all about, right?
Yeah.
So we may not have to, but I mean, honestly, let's see where we're going. We might jump back into it next week and continue the deep dive into the CFPD and behavioral, economical, social engineering.
Okay. Here we go. Qualified mortgage loans. In early 2013, the CFPB began posting a number of regulations pertaining to the home mortgages. The rules summarized under the ability to repay in qualified mortgage standards under the Truth in Lending Act, Regulation Z, sought to curb the very kinds of mortgages that alarmed Thaler and Sunstein, those with exotic features and chaotically changing rates. The claim, again, is that consumers are unable to fathom the consequences of those sorts of mortgages and must be protected from harm. To provide these protections, the CFPB has implemented a new label for qualified mortgages as put forth in Dodd-Frank. In the summary of the rule, it states that the Dodd-Frank Act sets certain products features, prerequisites, and affordability underwriting requirements for qualified mortgages, invest discretion in the bureau to decide whether additional underwriting or other requirements should apply. The final rule implements the statutory criteria, which generally prohibits loans with negative amortization, interest-only payments, balloon payments, or terms exceeding 30 years from being qualified mortgages. In other words, to be labeled a qualified mortgage, the lending term must steer clear of the practice outlined by Thaler and Sunstein. To encourage the lender to comply with the rules, the CFPB will provide safe harbor from litigation from any qualified mortgager in the event of a default. So once the mortgage is deemed qualified, it is free from legal claim illegitimacy and thus limits the liability for the bank. The flip side of this, of course, is that mortgages without this designation are now more vulnerable to lawsuits. The CFPB claims it is not trying to stigmatize non-qualified mortgages, Swanson 2013. Nevertheless, lawmakers from both sides of the political divide have pushed back against the new designation, claiming that it hurts rural lenders and borrowers who often use balloon payments, in which the final payments include a larger percentage of the principal balance Zebra 2013. In response, the CFPB has made efforts to pacify lawmakers by exempting smaller lenders with $2 billion in assets. In light of this grand effort to rescue consumers from predatory efforts, it would be prudent to examine the actual evidence of the use of complex mortgages, soon to be deemed unqualified by the CFPC. A recent working paper, which includes one author from the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, suggests that the targets of such loan terms are not low-income, ignorant buyers, but high-income, sophisticated buyers with a pattern of defaults that suggests a strategy rather than irrationality. The author concludes the report by saying, overall, both the characteristics of complex mortgage borrowers and their default behavior cast a doubt on the popular perception that complex mortgages are pushed by predatory lenders to naive households who do not fully understand the mortgage terms. Our results suggest instead that complex mortgages are taken out by relatively sophisticated borrowers who take advantage of the contract specifically and more strategically in their default decisions than borrowers with more traditional mortgages. The reason behind this claim is that mortgages with deferred rate increase the amount of amortization on the loan and therefore maximize value to buyers who are willing to walk away from the asset. The simple fact is that mortgages are not always purchased by naive homeowners. They are often used as assets to generate wealth, just like any other commodity. Some consumers place emphasis more on investment strategies than consumers of the home. If such buyers feel that their assets are no longer warrant investments, then they can simply walk away from the investment, and where a house is worth sustainably less than the remaining principal on the mortgage, it is highly rational to do so. In this sense, mortgages can be seen as put options, where the buyers make the consistent choice of claiming the asset at the end of the loan period, usually 30 years, or giving the assets back to the lender. This is not to say that all buyers are sophisticated, only that intentions when utilizing complex mortgages are pluralistic. So the evidence cited above indicates that more are viewing the assets as put options than not. Regardless, recognizing that there is more than just one type of consumer should be a starting point for understanding mortgage markets.
It sounds like a certain plot by somebody. It
Hmm.
really does. It sounds like it's a ploy to
USA.
yeah, it might be USA. It could be USA. I have a feeling that USA is in cooperation with these people, but
I'd been trapped into agreeing to have dinner with a man I'd been avoiding literally for years. You look terrific.
Okay, thank you.
I got around to asking him what he'd been up to in the last few years.
I am your true Nikolai Tesla.
What do you mean?
I even had this idea about, the connection of big pharma to farms
Tell me about it.
by having localized farms.
Huh.
A group of people have control and say so that just so happen to be Jewish. And they're all in cahoots. I don't know, is that too heavy-handed to put on this platform?
Do you want to know my actual response to all this?
Okay.
Those remarks were just full of hostility.
Have I reached Alex Jones territory yet? I love Hitler. If I had said that before you drank the coffee, it's hard for people to even listen to you.
I don't really know what you're talking about.
This is the issue when you hire atheists. I will eventually be president, in my lifetime. Hitler has a lot of redeeming qualities. He had a really cool outfit and stuff, and he was a really good architect. And he didn't kill 6 million Jews. That's just factually incorrect. Luckily for everyone, they could just write it off that, I'm crazy.
Well, why do you think that is?
Enneagram 478 Covenant Community. Look it up. Anyways.
that's what this sounds like, man. It sounds like it's a conspiracy.
So what does a CFPB make on the counterintuitive findings. Is that where I left off?
Yes.
Pluralistic. Okay. On page 564 of its 800-page anything but simplistic or straightforward initial report on qualified mortgages, the agency references the study, but states a conclusion counter to its findings. The CFPB report states the lower payment possibility for these loans allow borrowers to qualify for loans that they otherwise may not be able to afford. But this comes with the same risks that they described. The performance of many of these loans are also very poor and worse than expected with the onset of the downturn. Far from acknowledging the most common use of complex mortgages, the CFPB portrays the loan terms as preying on buyers unable to afford them, and consequently a damaging result during the 2008 financial crisis. While there is nothing untruthful in the statement, this portrayal suggests an enormous amount of confirmation bias on the part of the CFPB. Indeed, one of the chief difficulties with the BLE framework, as we will explain below, is that it does not address how to incorporate evidence that is contrary to its initial hypothesis. See Zerwinski, 2013b. If we assume a priority that consumers are ill-equipped to handle their decisions, then what evidence could possibly be convince us otherwise? As a case in point, studies such as Gent and Kolaski, I don't know if that's right, have found that
I don't speak
incentives.
Italian.
Yeah, have found that incentives very much matter when analyzing the possibility of default on home mortgages. In their study, Gent and Kolaski show that states with recourse laws in which lenders have greater opportunity to recover the principal of the loan by seizing additional assets tend to have a lower default rate, particularly when the value of the home is greater than $500,000. In other words, incentives matter, but their rules counter to the belief that the consumers are not responding rationally to their choice context. See Wright 2007 for additional evidence in this vein. So the CFPB ignores it on, or even represents it inaccurately. Sorry. This 20 pages probably could have stop.
You're stopping?
Well, I mean, as that 20 pages, it's another 10 pages will be done. But we're almost on time.
Another 10 pages and we'll be done. So we're going to have to segue this to next week and continue our deep dive into why government sucks. That too. Don't worry, Andrew. I'm retarded as well. That's the reason why, if you're retarded just like us and you want the news through memes, follow @retard_news on X, because the retards are taking over and the legacy media is an old dinosaur on the verge of collapse. So follow Retard News and let's bring the media back to a sense of reality. You want news? Retard News. Because we're all retards. Ain't that right, Andrew?
Mm-hmm.
So, but with that, I think that is perfect. We're at 20 pages on the PDF. We've gone through quite a lot into deciphering and getting this out there. So I think next week will be a opportune moment to close out and finish this series that we've decided to trek on.
And I would like to shout out Design Heretic actually providing this to us. It's very informative.
Yes, Design Heretic @DesignHeretic on X. Give him a follow. If and DM him if you want to know more, because he is like very profound in just finding this information for real. So and he's very he's very apt, obviously in the blockchain and crypto spheres as well. So if you ever want to learn crypto, uh, follow Design Heretic. So uh, especially in today's day and age, where we need to learn diversification. We need to learn that there's other avenues out there beyond the monetary monopoly of the worthless dollar. So, and the credit regulations, as of what we're talking about today, that deem you unfit to make your own decisions and force you to outsource your responsibility and your authority to making your own decisions. So who cares about informed consent, right? When you can just force people to do your will. It's one thing if governments were to be protecting citizens in a manner of promoting information, giving guidance, but it's another thing when you just totally just deregulate that input and put in your own facts to the case that we're just all dependent stupid people. We're docile creatures, we're cattle, and we need to be led astray. It's like, no, that's not reality. The reality is you're a human being, and you need to work for what you have, what you want, and put forth the effort to describe your life in your own book. And with that, I'm
And
gonna shut the fuck up and not dive into another promo. And I'm gonna let Andrew put himself over again. So any last words for today, Andrew, before
just
we close
touch
out?
on the Covenant community comment earlier. 478 revolving door. I think what's his name? Charles Manson.
A revolving door, but our country's
Yeah.
a revolving door
Uh,
now.
well, there you go. It's psychology,
So
baby.
it is psychology. Psychology has so many positives, but at the same time, when not used wisely and put into the hands of nefarious individuals that want to control every waking moment of your life in an administrative bureaucracy, um, it's not a good thing. The psychology is being used against us when in reality we should be working within psychology of reality because the whole world is based in psychological description.
Mumbo jumbo. No,
Mumbo
I just
jumbo.
it,
Exact. I mean, we all have a brain, right?
yeah.
We're all conscious. We all think. We all perceive. Our train of thought, our what we see. This all is a function of our neurology. So our perception of the world like my perception of the world is going to differ from your perception of the world. It's what we see, literally what we see. So Andrew wakes up every day, looks out the window, and sees pink zebras. I don't know how he sees pink zebras. I think he's a
Well,
schizophrenic, but hey, it's his perception of reality.
I mean, I did study Lacan for a little while. Did say that psychology is like a computer program, and then I found the Enneagram. So there you go. And 4 or 5
Yeah.
is a problem, and schizophrenic. So there you go.
I mean, I think you are a schizophrenic, man. Hate to break it to you. So, like, subscribe. We will be back on YouTube this weekend. Everything that has been popped off in the cycle of episodes this week will finally be on the YouTube. YouTube got mad because we decided to use we were using fair use on some TED Talk videos last week, and they got mad and decided to go against their own fair use terms of service and say that we copyrighted and infringed, but we didn't. We were using fair use and just
This
going over videos. But
this
whatever.
is why we should live stream over Gopher servers.
This is why Gopher servers need to make a comeback. Exactly. But with that, like, subscribe, follow us on Rumble, follow us, which we are live streamed right now on, and just let's get the message out there. Tell you people tell your people, and their people will tell their people, and we'll get the message, and hopefully the minority will become the majority. Start educating people on this, everybody. So we have comments. Mark says manufacturing consent. The smartest dogs are the easiest to train. Michael Malice. Very true. They're so pretty. I don't know what that comment was for, but manufacturing consent is exactly what we're pretty much distinguishing here.
If you cage train something and they're predisposed to a line of thinking, is it manufacturing consent?
Oh, he was referring to the pink zebras. They're pretty.
Oh.
So evidently Mark also sees pink zebras as well. So you're not alone. You're not alone, Andrew. So you have somebody to talk about your pink zebras.
I can't wait.
So with that, like, subscribe, follow us everywhere. Everywhere you get your podcasts. Leave a review. Hate watch us, man. Hate listen to us.
Insult my reading abilities.
Insult. I mean, Andrew's pretty illiterate, so yeah.
I'm trying.
And go check out Consciously Unmasked. Not Conscious, Drop the Mask. Over on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcast. Because Jason and Mark did a fantastic 2-part series the last couple weeks, diving into the media and pretty much how much it's just straight up propaganda for real. So check out that. And anything else, Andrew?
Hit me up on next if you have any questions. But thanks for watching, guys. It's always fun doing this with you.
Live long and prosper, and have yourself a wonderful weekend. And we will see you.
Shout out to the Emperor.
Yeah, shout out to the Emperor of all social media. I am for I am, and or I'm for I'm. But we will see you all on Monday at 5 p.m. Well, we won't see you, but you'll see us for Legacy News to start the week. Peace out, everybody.
Thanks for watching.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Pete Okerlund, and I'd like to welcome you to WCW Nitro.
You know, brother, you think you know what it takes to beat Hollywood Hogan, who wants to climb in the ring and try out the largest arms in the world. Holy style.
You want to wrestle an inch more Ric Flair, you gotta be able to walk that out and style and profile. Woo! You really think you're ready for the You really think you're ready for the Scorpion Deathlock? You think you're ready for a fatal encounter?
This is why they call me the total package. If you have a pain threshold to withstand the torture rack, let's find out.
Hallo, hier ist Alex Wright. Wenn ihr High-Flying Wrestling Action wollt, Spinning Sidekick, Top Turnbuckle Dropkick, dann nehmt mich. Der Sieg ist euch sicher. Versprecht euch.
Oh yeah! Watch the flying elbow drop off the top rope. Not only beat people 1, 2, 3, but I hurt him real bad. It only takes one of 1,000 holds. I think you're man enough for the challenge. You better be ready to wrestle, because you know, when you get in the ring with Eddie Guerrero, it's going to be high-flying and exciting. Hey, anytime you feel froggy, man, I'll slap on the buzz killer, rip your shoulder right out of socket. Wolfpack style! Hey, Funky Boy,
Like there's a choice here? Good God! Pick the man with the plan. Pick deep.
Hey, all you suckers out there, you wanna play the game? You wanna play with the big boy? Put your feet on the button, cause when you go down 110th Street, it's gonna be on like neckbone, sucker. This is Booker T from Harlem Heat, hardcore OG brother from 110th Street. The minute you punks got the guts to step up to the plate, push the button.
Yo, Chico, you selected Scott Hall? Get ready for a wild ride on the outside. Hey there! How'd you like to get powered, Bob? Come on, take me. I'm begging you, take me. Please take me.
You think you got the courage to step in the ring? I think you're gonna wind up with a snap neck with a choke slam.